Welcome to the Texas Conflict Coach radio program. If you've ever experienced or engaged in destructive or unresolved conflict, then you know it leads to broken relationships, distrust, and damaging results. Our program will help you manage and resolve conflict effectively with strategies, valuable resources, and support. Since 2009, our radio program hosted guest experts from around the globe sharing their perspectives, experiences, and expertise while giving you food for thought. If you can't listen live, then download and listen to any of our 300-plus podcasts in our library at texasconflictcoach.com. So sit back, relax, or join the conversation every Tuesday evening, or tweet us at TXConflictCoach.
Well, let me open this show by saying thank you and wow, for listening and engaging in our radio programs for the last 5 years. Yes, we are here. 5 years later, in April, the Texas Conflict Coach Blog Talk Radio has been in existence, and this today is our 200th episode. Joining me are my seasoned hosts, Zena, Zumeta, and Stephen Kotev, to celebrate and reflect on key moments over the last several years. So I appreciate you joining me for this moment for both you and Zena and Stephen.
Oh, we're excited to be here. I can't believe it's been 200 shows. It's amazing.
I know. It's hard to imagine that we've actually come to this place. It's like a blink of the eye, and here we are. So it is pretty amazing, and we'll definitely be talking about some highlights for each of us. Now, we are taking, listeners, your feedback, your comments, your questions in a variety of ways. We have the chat room open at blogtalkradio.com/Texas-conflict-coach. We are taking your live comments and questions on the phone. You can call in at 347-324-3591. We certainly are using our Twitter feed as well. You can use the hashtag TCCRadio and Twitter me at TXConflictCoach. Or for that matter, you can reach out to Stephen Kotev at Stephen, STEPHEN, KOTEV on Twitter as well. Now, we are doing a special giveaway for our anniversary show. So anyone who subscribes to our brand new e-newsletter at TexasConflictCoach.com during the live show today up till 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time will receive a limited edition autographed copy of my new mini-book called Stop the Dreaded Drama, 55 Tips for Ending Destructive Conflict. So on with the show. So Zena and Stephen, I could not have done this show without you and the numerous people behind the scenes that have made this happen, and especially our guests. And y'all have both played not only a role as a host, but also as a guest expert. And Zena, you've been with me now 4 years, and Stephen with me for 3 years. So what has this experience been like for you?
Don't forget that I started by interviewing you.
I know. It's like, what a concept. You're like, well, has anyone interviewed you? No. And it was just like, it never even, entered my mind. So that was a great beginning of that relationship and this new collaboration of ours. So what's this been like for you, this whole journey, for any of you?
Well, I just have to say that it's been very exciting. I've been doing this work for a long time, and to be able to interview people who have ideas that I've never heard about and that really opened my mind is just wonderful. It's also wonderful what people are offering to all of us, to the general public. It's just a real thrill to be part of it. And I think about some of the programs that I was able to host that were so exciting, including the ones, Patty, that you and I have done. But also, I was thinking there was one on Hurricane Katrina that was I'll never forget. There were several from the National Crime Prevention Council that I thought were very, very powerful. I remember talking to Cordell Wesselink from the community boards. So the community boards out in San Francisco was the very first community mediation center. And so it was a thrill, just now to be talking to somebody who's still doing that work.
Oh, absolutely, all this time. And what about for you, Stephen? What's this experience been like for you?
Patty, I've been passionate about this my entire life, and part of what was always a challenge for me was sometimes, when folks would say, what do you do or what do you want to do, they looked at you with this kind of blank look on your face, like, what do you, conflict resolution, huh? And things have thankfully changed and we're getting better at it. But what's been really rewarding for me is to be able to really talk about things that I think we need to talk about or folks should know more about. One of my biggest challenges is talking to employers or managers, and they sometimes don't know what we can do. And, this show has been a wonderful vehicle to help the public understand what's out there and how does it all work. And, I really had a lot of fun with Dan Dozier talking about what does litigation look like? What does mediation look like? What does arbitration look like? Because for a lot of folks, it's a term. There's nothing behind it. And to be able to talk to the public and to have our listeners find out, hey, well, what's it really like when you go to court? And what is that, outside of what folks see on TV? That's pretty special to me.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that, Zena, that, when Stephen was ending his statement about TV, because it immediately took me to that whole conversation around Fairly Legal. Remember the Fairly Legal TV episode? Very short-lived, probably a couple of seasons. But boy, did it generate a lot of discussion and a lot of buzz in our own dispute resolution community about here we are trying to educate the public about all the various ways in which we can deal with conflict in productive and constructive ways, mediation being one of them. And here we are watching this very glamorized, show called Fairly Legal. It was fun to watch. It was entertaining. That's the whole purpose. And yet it really sent a very different message about what really is the work that we do. So a lot of, people and colleagues and practitioners felt like, that's not what we do. Oh, my gosh, we got to, change, and everyone was up in arms, and lots of blogs were written about it, newsletters, and it was in the news, and we had like 2 or 3 shows on that. And that was a lot of fun, engaging with our colleagues about, how do we see these shows? And you could see any show, like, the CSI effect, when juries get together with the lawyers and they're like, oh, there's the jury, that's a CSI effect. Do you think that's really real? And so it was the same kind of concept. So that just came up for me as you were mentioning about television. So,
right.
Yeah, so the experience for me, as a host, one, it was really also a learning journey for me. All 3 of us are very, very passionate and very committed to the work we do and helping others move through conflict and deal with it, especially, in situations that feel very unbearable and very painful for people. And so we're there to help, talk about that. But what's been really interesting for me as a host is learning how to talk about it in a new way so that the everyday listener can understand what it is that we do. Because like you said, Stephen, sometimes people are like, what? Conflict, what? So having that conversation in a very different way, learning how to have that conversation with our guests in a very different way, and then being exposed to ideas and diversity of practice and philosophies that, as you said, Zena, we've been around a long time, 20-some-odd plus years doing this work. A broad range of guest experts have had a number of years that vary for everything from, 2 years of experience all the way up to 35-plus years of experience, and yet we're still hearing new strategies and new ideas and concepts. So I'm always amazed at something new that I've never heard and how exciting it is that it's out there.
Yeah, I agree. I remember I was talking with Stephanie West Allen on neuroplasticity and brains on purpose and all about the brain, and I just thought, that is so interesting that even as grown people, our brains are that plastic, that we can learn all these new things that actually gave me a lot of hope.
Yes, absolutely. That's been some of our more popular programs have been the things on neuroscience. And we've had some trends. And, in fact, I wanted to share with our listeners how our program has grown. You know, for the longest time, you know, I would always say to myself, am I providing value? Are we reaching the consumer? Are we reaching the everyday listener around the globe? And so here are some numbers that some of you might be surprised about that says someone's out there listening. So today is our 200th episode in our podcast library, and all 200 episodes are free and accessible to anyone in the world. We have over 14 categories covering a very wide range of themes and topics pertaining to all the possible ways in which conflict shows up in our life. We've had, to date, 209,700 listens to our program. Should I say that again? Drum roll, please.
Yeah.
Almost 210,000 listens. So someone is listening. And I'm so grateful for that. We've had 149 unique guests, separate guests. We've had some repeat guests who are wonderful to have them back returning to our program. And here are some of the top 5 greatest hits, which some of which you had mentioned earlier, Zena, which is the SAVE, which is the Students Against Violence Everywhere and the National Youth Violence Prevention Week. The other was the NCPC, which is the National Crime Prevention Council, and Cyberbullying Prevention. Those programs that focused on youth and violence and cyberbullying were very, very hot topics, including a third one, which is the dangers of teen sexting. I believe, Stephen, that you were the host on that one. Those were very, very highly rated, popular programs. The other 2 that were also very popular was how to manage financial conflicts within your family during the holidays. So that was a really hot one. And then finally, the one that we had with Michelle LeBaron, which was the choreography of resolution, conflict, movement, and neuroscience, which you just mentioned, Zena, the neuroscience of things. So those have been just some of our top 5 greatest hits. Any surprises there?
Boy, you know, there's so many that could have been.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the numbers are so high, and of course, as we've, you know, gotten exposure more globally, we actually have quite a bit of following in Australia, Britain, Canada, and parts of Western Europe, of course, as well as the United States. So it's wonderful to be able to get feedback and comments from people in different countries that they're listening to the program and that they find that really valuable. So why don't we take a stab? I've asked each of us, actually, to choose a program, just one, out of those 200 and 199, that was particularly meaningful to you. So, Stephen, why don't we start with you? Which program did you choose? And if you would just give us a brief summary, and then I'm going to play a small audio clip from it.
Okay, Patty. Thanks so much for letting me do this, because, you know, these kind of things I think are pretty special. The show I'm talking about is called The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And I had the chance to interview a gentleman named Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T. And what was really interesting about him was how he was able to go and present some things that happen in our everyday life that sometimes can make life so difficult, and show it in such a new light that I just found that very, very enjoyable and really eye-opening. What we were able to do, Patty, if I've got this right, is we've got a clip from that interview, and I thought maybe we could just play the clip and then I could talk about it afterwards. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. So why don't we play it now? So give me a second. And here we go.
My view is it's really left and right are like yin and yang. You need a force for change and progress, and you need a force for sort of slowing down and protecting the whatever structure we manage to keep around. So this, I think, is a lesson. It's one that has come to us from sages throughout history. that we are just so quick to jump into moral debates, to demonize, to judge, and we only see half the story.
Okay, so tell me about that particular clip for you.
Yeah, as he starts, he's talking about left and right, and what he's talking about is politics and the political left and the political right, and how in some sense they're seen as polar opposites. But in reality, as he presents it, they're actually a unified force that, when folks hear it, they're like, oh, you're a Republican, or oh, you're a Democrat, and I don't want anything to do with you. In reality, they're actually both very necessary and both very valuable. And, we were talking about what do you do at Thanksgiving when you've got that uncle or that aunt that you can't stand who is talking about MSNBC or Fox News or whatever. And what was really interesting was that, both sides of that equation, is he talked about, conservatism was much more about kind of holding things together, and liberalism or the left was much more about sort of flexing. But if you flex too far, you sort of fall apart, and if you stand your ground too long, you get stuck and also decay. So it was this way of looking at the world of saying, listen, both of those things have value. And if you can take a look at that and understand that, then fundamentally you can interact with folks very differently. And I thought that was incredibly valuable.
Okay, wonderful. And any comments that you have about that, Zena, what Stephen was saying, and how so true?
Yeah. Well, I think it just reminds us how quickly we do jump, and that we really have to step back and look at the balance in life.
It reminds me, Zena and Stephen, when you talked about, when there seems to be these polar opposites, and his emphasis on they both have value and how do you balance that. And that reminded me of one of the shows that we did called Coexistence. And it was very much about, Ireland and Northern Ireland and the wars there and the polar opposites, and yet learning how to coexist in some of those real polar opposite types of situations, whether it's religion or, like you said, politics or, whatever are racial issues, things of that nature, that we can find that balance, that they both have value, and how do we find that and interact. And, of course, we as practitioners find ourselves in many of these types of situations where we are there to help be a catalyst for that balance and or at least try to find a place that people can coexist. Very good.
Well, and just real quick, because the thing I thought that was most interesting is that he's taking a look at it all from a morality state, and how folks sometimes basically make a moral decision and then just sort of put some reasoning behind it. They don't actually reason it out. They just sort of make that decision. And so by understanding what are some of the moral underpinnings behind folks' decisions, you can then come to a better understanding of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to get at. So things like abortion, which could be incredibly divisive and is incredibly divisive, it was a way of understanding it through morality that for me helped me find some commonality and some, hey, this is something that actually maybe you could have a discussion about versus let's run away and let's not engage with this and it's tearing us apart.
Okay, very good. So, Stephen, why don't we before we go to Zena, let's tell listeners where we are, who we are, and we'll go from there.
Well, you're right, Patty. It is that time. For our folks, we're halfway through the show right now. You're listening to the Texas Conflict Coach Blog Talk radio program, and we're celebrating our 5th anniversary as well as our 200th episode. If you call in live and engage with us with a comment or question, Patty will send you a limited edition autographed copy of her new mini book. So that's where we're at. And Patty, where should we go from here?
Let's give Zena an opportunity to share what her special program is.
Oh, thank you. Well, I really had to go back to the interview that I did with Dr. Izzeldin Abuelaish, who was a Palestinian doctor, still is a doctor. And he worked across the border in Israel, was very much a bridge between cultures, but lived in Gaza. And of course, you know that there have been a lot of fighting right at that border. And at one point, the Israelis had bombed Gaza and actually bombed his house, killed his daughters. And he came out of that situation, horrible, horrible situation, with a vow to not hate. And he talks in the clip that I want people to listen to about what it does to the person who hates themselves, and what his antidote to hate is. He wrote a book called I Shall Not Hate. So can we listen to the clip?
Absolutely. And the name of the program is also called I Shall Not Hate. This is a little bit of a longer clip. It's about 4 minutes, so just give a breath, and here we go.
Thank you.
I Shall Not Hate, and this title, when I selected it, because many people after that, they said to me, how can you overcome, how you can't hate? As if I was supposed to hate. I said, why not? Why should I hate? And do you think with hate, am I going to bring justice to my daughters? With hate, am I going to change the situation? Hate is a blindness. Once you hate with hatred, you are shut down. You are blocked from seeing any good thing. You don't see the light. You don't see the path where to go. You will be misled. It's a poison that you inject yourself. It's a fire that you will all of the time boiling and eating you from inside. And the one that you plan to hate, is he going? Is he thinking of you? At all, he is not. He is not in this world living with you or thinking of you. So you are destroying yourself for nothing. You were destroyed. You suffered a lot from the first tragedy, and you were a victim of that tragedy, and then to be another victim of this hatred. How many times in life do we want to be victims instead of being victims the whole of life? The opposite. The first time to be victim, to stand up, to challenge that tragedy, to survive, and to say, I will never accept it. I will challenge the one I plan to hate, the one who used the bullet to kill my daughters. He used weapon. I am not going to use the same. If I don't want to use the same, I should be wise and to keep my mind, my thinking, open my eyes widely. And how can I challenge him with wisdom, with good words and kind deeds? The antidote of this hate that we plan to inject ourselves with it is to succeed. And that's what do we want. Each of us, it's difficult, but at the end, this is the most efficient and effective approach to be changed from being a victim and drowning in this tragedy to an endless, hopeless way is to survive, to carry the pain, to carry the wound, to carry the scars, to energize you, to jump like a lion, to stand steadfast, stronger, more determined to challenge and to succeed. I can say to you, the antidote of hate is to succeed. This is the success, and this is the message. And to give the ones that you plan to hate, to send him on daily basis messages. You will never destroy me. I am surviving. I am living. And I am succeeding in my life.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
So
it's
Zena.
really beautiful. And I loved it when he said that success is kind words and good deeds.
You know, that was such, I remember that program. That always seems to be the one that sticks in my mind the most, how powerful his story was, and the dreadful pain and what I would think would be a very unbearable pain to deal with, and yet his story was just, it was unbelievable, and I'm so blessed that you had the opportunity to be the guest host for him. What other things really stood out for you about this clip? I mean, what is it you really want listeners to take away? Because I'd love for them to go back and listen to this whole entire program.
Yeah, I think that's the message. Go back and listen to the whole thing. His whole story is just amazing. He is an obstetrician gynecologist, and he talked about how for him the idea of being a doctor was to give life, and that, you know, this is still part of him even after that tragedy. And of course what he didn't say during that was his wife had just died of cancer before all this happened, so his life was just turned inside out, and yet he still has that kind of hope and that kind of service and that kind of feeling that you still owe the world your kind words and your good deeds, and that it makes no sense to hate. I loved that message.
Love that. Thank you so much for selecting that audio clip and sharing that with us. That was a very special program. So far we've listened, we've selected two. Stephen selected The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion with Jonathan Haidt, and that's Haidt. And then, of course, the one you just selected, I Shall Not Hate, with Dr. Abuelaish. I'm sorry?
And so, Patty, what is it that you picked? Which one did you pick?
Well, you know, I picked one. It was so hard to pick. It really was. But the one I picked was very meaningful to me. Also a very, very sad story, and also connects to our series in April that starts next week on workplace bullying and harassment. And it was the Kevin Morrissey story, When Work Equals Life. And this was with his sister, Maria Morrissey, and Eskew Walker. And Eskew is a leading expert in workplace bullying and in charge or in volunteering and leading the charge around the Texas Healthy Workplace Bill, which is one that's being tried to be passed through many of the states. But Kevin committed suicide. And so a lot of it was based on the belief that he was being bullied at work by his boss, and many coworkers knew about this situation, but no one was doing anything to help him. And so when we first did the show with Maria Morrissey, his sister, and Eskew Walker, she was talking still from a pretty raw point. And since then, some things have changed. So we'll talk about that after I share the audio clip. This is about 1 minute and 30 seconds, so let me do that now.
Great.
How the last 2 weeks of his life were just so painful for him. And to know that it was preventable. I really believe this entire tragedy was completely preventable. If there had been policies in place, the people that they went to would have known what to do instead of feeling like their hands were tied.
So even though, and I think that's the part I'm hearing from you, is the thing that makes you the most angry. It's the fact that it could have been preventable, that people, not only did he reach out for help, but that others reached out for help on his behalf, and nothing was being done.
Exactly.
Now, what words of advice can you give other families who are dealing with a similar situation?
Well, I would tell them to get angry, get angry and tell their story and demand justice, because I want to live in a just society, and workplace bullying is wrong, and there's no reason for it, and it shouldn't exist. We're the only Western democracy without laws against workplace bullying, and that's just wrong. We are better than that. And, you know, people tell me it's the same thing that they used to say about sexual harassment. Well, that's just the way it is. But it's not that way anymore about sexual harassment, you know, until there was, like, too many stories about it. So people need to tell their stories, and they need to educate themselves about workplace bullying so they can understand what behaviors, you know, how it's defined, what behaviors constitute that.
So that was a little snippet. Yeah.
Wow.
She was very, very angry about her brother's suicide. And this was from the Virginia Quarterly newspaper up in the East Coast, and he worked as an under the editor. He was actually an editor himself, and you know, so part of her message was, as she just said just now, is we need to educate ourselves about what are the behaviors of signs, what's acceptable, why does this continue to be acceptable behavior in the workplace? And when people are trying to reach out for help, you know, is management, is leadership, is HR paying attention to it, but yet they're afraid. They don't know what to do about it. And I think we're starting to hear, of course, we're hearing more and more about workplace bullying and harassment in the news even, you know, recently, in the NFL.
Right.
You know, and so people are really starting to take notice and saying, wait a minute, this is not acceptable. And the other point she made out, you know, is that his other coworkers and peers and direct reports knew about it, but they just didn't know what to do about it, or if they said something, it fell on deaf ears. And one of the other biggest messages that she and S.Q. Walker both had to say is tell your story. In other words, don't isolate, because a lot of folks who are targets of this type of behavior tend to feel isolated because no one else wants to be a target of that, so they are quiet, their witnesses are bystanders, and so what do we do? And so we're going to have a number of episodes this month that talks from different angles of workplace bullying, from the target perspective to the bystander witness perspective. What do we do as an active bystander? What exactly is workplace bullying? Because people are kind of just throwing the word out like for every little behavior is workplace bullying, which it's not. And so how do we raise awareness about what we're really talking about? That was such a sad and powerful story.
Yeah, and it was great that she was able to really explain her, not just her anger, but her frustration at the fact that as a society we're not doing anything about it. But I'm thinking that's changing. That's changing.
I think so. I mean, what about you, Stephen? Have you've heard more things about that? Because you do a lot of work in the workplace.
Yeah, well, and you know, Patty, I think this is where, you know, I'm yet again thankful that we have such great listeners, because there's a lot of times where no one really knows what to do. You know, sort of listening to the sister saying, oh, well, that's just how it is. But for a lot of times people say that because they just don't know what to do. They don't know what's out there. They don't know that someone has actually got something to say or a strategy to respond to it. And, you know, I think that's what's I find very valuable is that, you know, we've got some really great listeners, and, you know, I hope that they're really getting something out of this, because a lot of times, you know, we hope that you listen in and you go, well, I don't know, what do I do? And then, you know, you leave with at least a better understanding, or sometimes, you know, we have those call to actions as well, and, you know, folks can follow up from there.
Now, I do want to say that there is a new documentary out that's called What Killed Kevin. And it's very interesting because once the suicide happened, it was all recorded by the police. So you could actually hear him calling in, and you could hear him shooting himself. You can hear, so there's a number of things that were happening, and of course there was this reaction. Oh, it's all, you know, the boss's fault. It's all, they shut down the offices, you know, they were like, okay, should he be fired? You know, so all this pointing of fingers, and he was a workplace bullying and things of this nature. So Beverly Peterson, and this is on our website as well, on the Kevin Morrissey story at the TexasConflictCoach.com. Beverly Peterson, who is a a film documentary, does a lot of film documentary on workplace bullying specifically. She's out of New York City, and she spent the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 years doing research on his specific case, interviewing, videotaping, to really say what really killed Kevin, and that is the title of the documentary.
Wow.
The documentary is available for all universities and educational institutions to use in educating people about workplace bullying, and it's called Our Bully Pulpit. So Our, O-U-R, Bully, Pulpit, P-U-L-P-I-T, they are a resource not only for the film, What Killed Kevin, but also they're a huge resource on articles, resources, and videos and stories specifically about workplace bullying. It's very, very powerful. So definitely, folks, take a look at Our Bully Pulpit. So that's the update on that since we did that program.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, folks, I want to thank, there's so many people to thank about the show and the success it's become, especially those people behind the scenes. And let me just say a big thank you to my husband, Robert Porter, who is the guru of all things editing and audio files. I don't know how many times he has come to our rescue to, edit out all kinds of things. It was really interesting, Zena, when we were taking the clip from I Shall Not Hate, and I was listening to it very diligently. And you know what was interesting, and I don't know if you picked up on this, is I was hearing the birds chirping in the background.
Yes.
And I thought, how refreshing that we're talking about this powerful, sad situation that he was in and his message, and here you heard the liveliness and the beauty and peacefulness of the birds chirping. I never even noticed that when we were doing the program live, and then when I went back, I'm like, okay, did someone edit that in?
I know. I didn't remember it either, but I loved hearing it. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. So Robert has been tremendous in helping all of us behind the scenes. Sean Tabbets, who's my executive assistant, she's been with me 2 years now, and she's been tremendous in helping us manage, maintain, create all our program pages for our guests. She's in contact with them all the time, really keeping tabs on everything. She is really the master of putting together Blog Talk Radio and pages and helping us market, but really reaching out, working with each of us and our guests and keeping us all, online, on track with what we need to do. Really appreciate also our advisory board members, which of course the two of you are part of, and thank you, Zena, for even suggesting an advisory board, because it's been great having the two of you, and of course Lou Giesel with MACRO, which is the Maryland Association of Conflict Resolution Office out of Maryland, and of course Cindy Noble with Synergy Coaching out of Canada. They have all been fabulous in helping me think through themes, topics, ideas, direction, and it's been wonderful to get that. Our graduate student interns, over the last couple of years, we've been using our graduate student interns from the University of Baltimore's Dispute Resolution Program. And, of course, our guest experts. We could not do this program without our guest experts from around the world. And, of course, you, Zena, and Stephen, for being here. And, of course, you, the listener. I mean, there's so many people to thank. Is there someone I'm missing or someone you would like to also recognize?
Yeah, Pattie, you. I mean, this has been your brainchild. This has been an amazing thing for you to have thought of and to carry it out for all of these years. I just have to give my tribute to you.
And I want to absolutely agree. I don't think folks realize how much work it takes to do this. And, this isn't anything that, we make any money off of. This is about our dedication to educating the public and to interacting with folks. And so the amount of work that goes into this is really tremendous. Once for us, we're underneath the hood. We see what it's like. And, kudos to you, Pattie. It's an amazing gift.
Well, thank you. And I want to underscore what you just said about the community education piece. We've been such strong, passionate, committed individuals about helping people deal with the conflict situations they're in. Zena, you work with a lot of family and workplace. Stephen, you work with a lot of workplace. I work exclusively now in the workplace. And the thing about it is that we've all been involved at various levels nationally with the Association for Conflict Resolution, and the mantra was, we need to educate the public, we need to educate the public, we need to educate the public. And I'm like, what are we going to do to educate the public? What are we going to do? And finally I'm just like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to take the bull. I don't know what I'm going to do, but, thankful to Jennifer Navarrete here in San Antonio, Texas, who was a social media guru. She had her own radio shows, and she goes, Patty, you need to do a radio show. And I thought, are you out of your mind? And that's how I got started with, saying, how do we use social media and how do we use, platforms that are so readily available to any one of us, free, Blog Talk Radio being one platform of many online radio platforms. And without her coaching me and getting me started and encouraging me and saying, you can do this, and then getting us started and taking that first step, April 2009, and here we are 5 years later. So thank you. Big, big family hugs to all of you and to you, Zena and Stephen, for being part of this with me.
Well, and I want to say again to Robert and Sean for the work that they did, and to the listeners who really make this program.
Thank you. So we do have an assignment for the week, as we always do on almost every show. And so we encourage you to listen to one of the programs from our podcast library. Of course, we highlighted 3 particular ones. Again, the Kevin Morrissey story, When Work Equals Life, I Shall Not Hate, and The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. But really, we have 200 episodes to choose from in 14 categories, so I encourage you to listen to just one that really piques your interest and share the program link to a friend, a colleague, or a family member. We have a lot of shows pertaining to family. We would love to hear your feedback, your comments, your suggestions for future episodes. Maybe you have someone in mind that could be a great guest for our program. You can Twitter us at TX Conflict Coach, or like us on Facebook at Conflict Connections. And remember, you have until 8 p.m. tonight, Central Standard Time, to subscribe to our new e-newsletter at www.texasconflictcoach.com, and you will receive a copy of my new mini-book, Stop the Dreaded Drama. Any final comments, Stephen or Zena?
I think you've said it all.
Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to Patty. And it is an amazing resource for folks. It's 200 shows from amazing folks from across the globe. Please take advantage of it. Tell other folks. Engage with us. Let us know what you think. We really want to know what you have to say.
All right. Well, thank y'all so much. Y'all have a good evening, and thank you, listeners.
Thank you for listening to the Texas Conflict Coach. We hope you've enjoyed the program. You can find over 300 podcasts archived to listen at your own convenience at texasconflictcoach.com, or download the podcast at iTunes or Stitcher Radio. To learn about upcoming radio programs and resources, sign up for our monthly e-newsletter.